Hello, everybody, and welcome to Power Ranking 2 for Bidoof's Champion Showdown Tournament. I am your host, Anthony Pappas, joined by our co-hosts.
Hi guys, I'm Brady. You guys know me.
And a special guest appearance from Emu Hunter.
Oh my gosh, the talent is flooding out the rafters with this lineup. Well, uh, good season, everybody, so far. Amazing season. We've seen some really crazy teams. We've seen some crazy strats. We've seen some crazy RNG. Actually, I think that'll probably be the meme for this video thumbnail. Is something about RNG.
Yeah, imagine not hitting hydro pump. Am I right?
Who would do such a thing?
But it's been a freaking blast. So thank you guys all for playing. Any notes on the season so far, Brady, Emu?
Well,
You go ahead, Brady.
first, bro.
I was just gonna say my initial note was just everyone is like you can really see the improvement between this season and last season.
Absolutely.
I think so many games last season ended in like a 6-0 sweep, or someone would lose one mon or something like that. All the games have been a lot closer, and you can see the improvement from player to player, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar. I would say this about literally every single player from last season. I think that all of the players that we saw last season have had drastic improvement. I mean, no offense to some players, but last season it was very predictable as to what people were going to be doing, and I feel like this season everybody's bringing a lot more to the table in terms of competition, and it's been a lot of fun to watch people develop and grow in this game, in this tournament. I mean, honestly, games are a lot closer now than they were last season, and I can only imagine how the second half of the season is going to go as people continually get more used to their teams. So it's been very cool to watch.
I absolutely agree with both of you. And we've kind of created our own meta. People are bringing really out there strats that you'd never see at a pro tournament because it's kind of it works, It's something to kind of bamboozle your opponent. Well, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's fun to see either way. So I highly approve.
One of the benefits of Gen 9 is the fact that the generation mechanic, especially since we've watered it down a bit in this season, the generation mechanic is not overwhelmingly powerful, and the Pokemon themselves, the power level got significantly decreased. Overall,
Yes.
that is.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a result, the individual's gameplay becomes a lot more meaningful than it does to just be oh, I'm gonna come in with some legendary with overpowered stats.
Mewtwo.
Yep.
Right. I mean, that's kind of it. It's there are certain mons that are just absolutely bustedly strong that can run through 3 mons if you're not careful. Versus in this season, that isn't necessarily the truth anymore. So you have to be more meticulous with your gameplay. And even since that was the case, games have become more intricate from everybody. It's not like somebody's just walking over somebody with their best mon anymore. So I feel like people are going more blow for blow, and it's way more fun to watch from a viewer perspective.
No, just a very, very quick ad. Last season I won half my games by just sending out Rayquaza with a focus sash and dragon dancing. And I think it's that would not fly in this league this season. You can really see it, especially in team comp too, that last year a lot most people's teams were just kind of thrown together. It's oh, what mon is strong, whereas you see a lot more synergy, I feel like, in this year's teams compared to last year's.
1,000%, yeah.
Absolutely. Totally agree with both of you. All right, that being said, with our opening notes, we will get into the actual ranking. So as you guys have been seeing, we each ranked everyone's team, and no hard feelings for wherever you are on this list. This was really hard, especially there were some matchups that were 2 or 3 or even 4 people who were neck and neck. So it was very hard to end up coming to a decision. But we had to put people somewhere. So this is the ending ranking. So we will be starting out with Team Sad, sponsored by Mundie.
I still love that name, Mundie. That's so good, dude.
It's amazing. Brady, what can you tell us about Mundie's team?
a couple of things about Mundie's team. I'll just do a recap of some of the things that I touched on last time. Your team has a weakness to the ice type, which people have been exploiting throughout the season, and I think you've seen that before. Um, you're becoming more accustomed to playing around that, I would say. But that being said, that's something that is clearly like you saw against your game against Jalen. Like the reason why he went Terra Ice Regieleki is not only for Bolt Beam but it also just works really really well into your team, and as a result, it makes it a lot easier for somebody to just run through your team in that regard. So that's something that you need to watch out for with your team. But I think, like I said, I think that you've done a good job of coping with that and then trying to maneuver around that as best you possibly can. And so even with all of that, I would still say that you're doing a good job with that. The other thing is your team has a problem with the water type. I think Cacturn has been a staple for your team. I didn't think people realized how good Cacturn was just because of Water Absorb and then Sucker Punch. But it is such a wall breaker for your team. It's so good. So I'm glad that you were able to put that to good use. And going to your gameplay, I mean, guys, we all have to realize Mundie started out this season and he hadn't played Pokemon for years. I mean, this is the first time he's picked up this game in basically forever, right? And even despite that, he is still a competitive player in the game, winning games against people. And it's just to me, it's like it's amazing to watch Mundie do all of this. I know I'm gonna wax on just for a quick second. Like everybody else has had experience and has had previous seasons. Mundie hasn't had that, so he's never really done a draft league before. And despite all of that, he's kicking butt. So like I'm proud of how you're going with all of this. I still think that your team definitely has some weaknesses, and it's going to be tough for you to play around those. But you're learning to play around them better. My biggest thing when I'm watching your games though is how you're using Excadrill. My biggest recommendation for you is if you have Hippowdon up and Sand goes down and Excadrill's out front, Excadrill is not a Mon worth sacking at that point. That Mon is very, very, very good at the sand because sand chip damage makes so that focus sashers can't come in and take a hit, right? And then B, it gets double the speed inside of the sand, and it's super strong just by itself with that stab coverage too. So it's never worth sacking Excadrill if you can avoid it and get double speed and then come in and deal a lot more damage. So one thing that I've noticed in your games is that when Sand goes down and Excadrill's injured, it's bye-bye Excadrill. And I don't think that should be the play for you a lot of times. I feel like your play should be bring something else in to die, bring something else in to pivot in to try to predict the move that's coming in to kill Excadrill. So, anyways, that's a big recommendation for me for your team is you utilize your like main core mons a little bit more effectively in that regard. The other thing is, and Mundie, I'm not sure if you know this, you might know this, you might not know this, but in Sand, rock types get a buff to their defense, their special defense specifically. It's a 50% boost. So sometimes it might be worth on your team, and I'm not saying do this all the time, but pivot into mons that either have rock type or you could even Terra into the rock type with some of your mons to get an automatic special defense buff. And then you also are immune to sand with that in of itself. So anyways, those are thoughts that you could have later on in the season just to kind of play around with a little bit, I guess. So just think about that in the future. But either way, Mundie, like I said, I'm proud of the way that you're playing so far, and I think that you're coming a long way, and I can't wait to see how you work with the rest of your season, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Mundie's growth has been incredible. And now that we're talking about this, I'm realizing maybe we should have released this the week before trades ended, but rip.
Yeah, I thought about that too. Yeah.
I still have on my sheet that he should have got taken Corv because Corv still wasn't taken, and it would have been so good on your team. But
yeah, so basically I agree with a lot of what you said. Mundie's team is just like it's like a solid starter character in a video game. It's like your classic knight or whatever, and then you have other people like archetyping out. But this is just like it's good at what it does, and I think Mundie has been getting exponentially good. His learning curve, from a personal standpoint, Mundie's learning curve in these things is scary fast. So he has been learning so fast. And I think that's part of what plays into this is your ability to learn all what is here is going to play a huge factor because I think a lot of the decisions you make are based on incomplete information. Like sometimes after games, I'll hear you, "Oh, I didn't know that." And so like the more games you play, the more you'll know that, and that just comes from experience. Also, if you want to do like randoms on Showdown or whatever, but um, you definitely will become better and better at that over time. Uh, the other thing, a specific note I have for you, Mundie, is that uh, you, as well as this, is kind of a common problem around some people in the league, is like you kind of have a fear of switching out. And we've even talked about this before, but like when you have them on and it's not doing a ton of damage, you just won't switch it out. You'll keep kind of attacking for that chip damage. And a lot of times it's better to switch into a tank that can take, whatever the other person's attacking with, and then kind of set up, or toxic it, or there's a lot of moves you can do, but learning to be okay with switching. And it's really scary in an actual game, because you could totally switch into something, and totally lose it, right? But a lot of the times it's better than losing. Like, for example, I can think of one time where you kept in Roaring Moon and just kind of kept attacking with it. And that, as you know, that mon has huge potential, and especially when it comes out, it gets that booster. So if you switch it out, you lose that booster, right? So it kind of sucks. But sometimes it's better to take that blow and switch it out, instead of just kind of continuing to whittle it away and lose it. So that kind of like, continue attacking vibe, I've seen it for a couple players, but I think that's something you could work on. However, the actual like team prep and cool strategies you're bringing into games is really awesome. Like, I mean, literally the first week you brought like special attacking Cactor, and like you've got like these awesome and builds that work too. So I think you've got a lot of creativity and a ton of potential. I think just experience, and both knowledge wise and game flow wise, is really going to help you. Camden, anything to add?
Yeah, just a few quick things, but first and foremost, I don't mean to rock the boat too much here because I'm new, but we had stated at the beginning of this that we were trying to go under 1 hour, and that has officially gone out the window. So
yeah,
I just
good point.
But so a few quick notes. I've always loved Excadrill Sand. I don't know, even last year when it was used, I can't remember who used it last year, but was it Tyler? Tyler used that? I don't remember.
Last year. Jeez, I should know.
Anyway, but I've loved that strat for the longest time, and I completely agree with both of kind of what they were saying. Brady had initially said like a lot of times you sack Excadrill and maybe you don't need to, because again it's such a good ace, and believe me when I say I've struggled out with that with Iron Bundle too, because sometimes I let him go down when he's low HP, and sometimes it's better to save him. So it's a really good final trump card if it's like, all right, put all my chips on the table, Another thing I noticed is when I was prepping against you, you don't have many prominent special attackers. And I don't know if, if trades are over. I don't know if that can be rectified at this point. But like you have Sylveon, which is a very good special attacker, but pretty slow. And then you basically have like Cacturne with Dark Pulse, which kind of usually prefers to be a physical attacker anyway. So you just don't have, I mean, I guess Empoleon too, but that's one thing. When I was prepping, I was like, all right, well, if you can invalidate the one or two special attackers he has and then just set up with Calm Mind or something like that, his team is really, really going to struggle against that. And then final note, Brady had kind of mentioned it about the special defense boost. It doesn't look like you have any rock types. So like, again, if we were still doing trades, adding in a good rock type that would benefit from that would really be helpful for this team as well. But overall, I can't credit to how much you've learned because I don't know you well enough. But I mean, it seems like you're learning very fast from your baseline. So great job. Pokemon is one of the steepest learning curves I think I've ever seen in terms of a game. So it's really impressive, and I'm sure that was pretty daunting to come into this league and draft a team and then try and put it up against all. Yeah, I mean that's That's incredible. I mean, that's terrifying. So congrats.
All right, good points, everybody. We
And
are
I
now,
end my turn.
and I end my turn in defense mode. We're now moving on to the talk of the town, Captain Pufferfish with power. Brady, what do you think about this guy?
Okay, so I struggle with your team, Noah, because it's not like it's a bad team. Like, you genuinely have a decent team in terms of its comp and how it could function. But the problem is, you run it the same way every single time, and you min-max into wishy-washy so hard that it's so predictable. Like think back to our game. The reason why I did so well in our game was because I knew exactly what you were going to be doing every single play, and I had a mon that perfectly countered every single move that you were making. It got a little dicey there for like 2 seconds, and even then I was still able to play around it a little bit. Like I'm trying to like come off and be realistic here, because like it's tough for me to be able to say, look, this team is always going to be better than this one when your team actually has a good construction. But that being said, it doesn't seem like you're trying to win games. It seems like you're trying to gain kills with wishy-washy. And as much as I appreciate the enthusiasm behind being a kill leader, if you're trying to get into playoffs, I'm pretty sure you won't make it with that kind of mentality. Like that's just a reality that you're going to have to face. The more that people get used to their teams, the more that they're going to be able to counter the same strategy that you've been able to see. So all I'm saying is it may be smart to look back through your team and try to realize the other strengths that your mons have that could be utilized better and more in the future. I mean, Jirachi is an amazing mon. I mean, it's got Doom Desire, which is Future Sight with Steel and 140 base power. I mean, it's got Healing Wish. It's got so many good options that aren't just Calm Mind Baton passing to Wishy-Washy. But I've seen that too many times, and it's just too predictable. Like I said, I was able to come in, and it didn't really feel like a game by the end of it for either of us, I don't think. So, anyways, just food for thought in that regard, because I do think that you have a good team, and I do think that you can play well with it.
Yeah, I literally only had one note on you, and it was bring different sets. Like, you've got a really good team, and I don't think you would need to, even if we were doing trades. Maybe we should think about it. Well, the council will discuss if we're gonna do trades this week. But I think it's clear what the point of this team is, and it's really funny. However, just because you build a funny team doesn't mean you need to bring the same set every time. I could see some super fun sets coming out of. I mean, like, you can't even really use Revival Blessing properly because you're kind of just saving it for the wishy-washy. So, like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of really. I mean, this whole team is full of mons that have like really varied strats, right? So I think you could see some really fun options come out, and I really hope there are some super fun options that come out. And I think, maybe now after this many games, you're starting to kind of move away. I'm hoping you're starting to kind of move away from using. Not that it's always bad to use that strat. It's just like you want to surprise your opponent, because just like me and Tyler with the Gargantuckle, if you do the same thing too many times in a row, people are going to catch on, right? So I really think, this team could pull through and like have some really cool fun strats and destroy some games, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, very similar notes. I assume that the wishy-washy play is for the meme at this point, but it's like when you have a mon, especially if you were going to do that strat, when you have a mon on your bench like Dragapult, that would absolutely love like a wish pass from like a weakness policy Jirachi. I mean, that's what was so effective in our game too. I mean, that Dragapult was dangerous. I mean, when you get that thing +2 special attack, I mean, there's not a thing in this league that wants to come in on that, like, so yeah, I mean, just mix it up a little bit, have some variety, because if like Brady was the perfect example of that when that monkey came in. I mean, if you have one mon that invalidates that strat, and it basically invalidates your whole team. So I just same with these guys, mix it up a little bit. I think that again the framework is there, just maybe not quite the execution just yet.
Very nice, very nice. Now moving on to Geek Deer with KSB. Brady, take us away.
So here's the thing about Reagan's team. I've always believed in Reagan's team. I always think that your team is actually pretty solid in terms of a rain team. It covers King Gambit's weaknesses really, really well in terms of lowering the power of fire. I mean, and then also Baskia Legion pairing really, really well with Hespatra and King Gambit. I mean, you've got a solid core in of those mons right there. I think that your mons themselves will work. But that being said, there's a couple of things that I was able to take advantage in terms of your play. One thing that I've noticed about you, you love to lead Espatra, right? And I love Espatra. It's a great mon. It really can be a make or break mon in terms of a game. I mean, you've won a game with it. You know that as well as anyone else does. That it's a really, really good mon. But the thing about it is, if you lead your ace every single time, Espatra needs turns to set up. And when we played together, that was one of the biggest things that I was able to exploit against your team. I thought that you were going to lead Espatra. You did end up leading Espatra. I was able to lead Spidops and instantly come in first impression you for like 80% of its health. It's like, then if I have any priority after that, even if you somehow get through Spidops at that point, even if I have any priority after that, that Mon dies and that's like one of your better Mons. So it's food for thought in terms of how you want to play with those Mons. You obviously King Gambit, Supreme Overlord. It can come in at the end, and it can be. I mean, you also use that in our game, which was always. I mean, it's always a good default when it's like, okay, back against the wall, King Gambit comes in, and those plus, those basically choice banded sucker punches are brutally strong, and that sucks to fight against because it's like, oh my gosh, that's so strong with King Gambit. But that being said, like, if you're always going to make the same plays every single time, eventually people are going to be able to play around that, and I think that's where you're going to start to come into the most dangerous territory. So if I were you, I would start experimenting a little bit in terms of how you play and what you're doing things with. I mean, like, there's no crime in coming in with a mon and then switching it out to go to a different mon if you realize that the starting matchup isn't good. Like, in that Espatra Spidops lead, if you wanted to switch Espatra out and come in with something that you think is going to be a really good counter into that mon, that's a great idea, right? Something that could counter like sticky webs or something along those lines. But just keeping to the same strategy every single time, it's going to make you predictable, and in draft league, predictability is going to be the downfall of a player.
Yeah, I kind of agree and disagree with some points. I think although Reagan, you used Espathra a lot as your lead in the first few games, I feel like you're kind of moving away for that. But yeah, I do agree that I think some creative prep would really help your team out, and you've said as much just after last game. So, everyone in the league is allowed and encouraged to prep with people and to get advice from people before their games. So, we would absolutely be happy to help you out with that. I'm pretty sure anybody in the league would be happy to help you out with that, but you're more than welcome to ask before a game, hey, what do you think about this set or this thing? Because I think that can really vary up your game and open your eyes to some possibilities you might not have seen. The other note I kind of had is that I really do like Brady said, I love you've got great synergies on your team between a lot of mons. I always like, as your team is forming, I'm like, I don't know where she's going, and then when you're done, I'm like, oh, that's some pretty cool strategies. But I think, especially with the Espathra and King Gambit, they almost act separately from the rest of your team. Like, because I don't know if you put them on a pedestal, but that's what I was going to say. Like, they seem like they kind of exist to do one thing and they don't really work in synergy. When the real, like, benefit of having, like, uh, a dark psychic fighting core, even though you don't have the fighting, is to like um, switch them around each other and use them kind of seamlessly together, right? You know, if a mon comes in that Espathra can't take, well then you go to King Gambit and vice versa, right? So um, and using your other mons in conjunction with that, where there's kind of a smooth transition in between the mons instead of it's just like, oh, Espathra's out, okay, Espathra does its thing, oh, it's dead, you know, that kind of thing. That being said, you know, again, really love the team comp, and I think you know you've made some really creative decisions that have worked out. Uh, I just think with yeah a little more prep and then a little a little less predictability in play, um, your team will really shine.
I want to I want to start off by apologizing, Reagan, because I think Brady can attest a little bit. I definitely slept on this team too much at the beginning of the season. Mostly because I really didn't respect King Gambit. But I mean that thing is an absolute monster. After watching it play in our league, like I mean it after 5 of its allies go down and it gets that Supreme Overlord, I mean that thing's crazy. But I I love that initial 3 Ispathra, King Gambit, Basque Legion. And Tony had made some good points about they kind of worked separately, but I feel like Basque Legion hasn't really been used to success at all up to this point. And I missed your last game versus Noah, but it feels like a lot of the times when you're bringing your rain team, you're bringing the mons that maybe don't work as well in the rain. Like you'll bring like Polytoad and Quagsire with a Lolamola or something like that, and it's like you're just not getting a lot of raw damage output with that.
Yes.
Whereas like if you brought Polytoad and Basque Legion, and then Basque Legion gets its Swift Swim and it has a choice band or something like that. I mean, there's not many mons in this on this spreadsheet that want to take a choice banded wave crash from Basque Legion, you know? So I think maybe just being cognizant of that, because once you get past Ispathra and King Gambit, a lot of times the damage you bring to games is a little lackluster. And none of them are really setup oriented either. So they can't really start off doing much damage and they can't really go up from there. So be a little cognizant of that. You're using a rain team with really good rain mons. So just maybe try and take a little more advantage of that.
One thing that I wanted to add to at the end of mine is one thing that I would love to see more is like Raikou. Raikou is such a good mon, and it was very slept on in terms of how it was tiered, and you picked it up. I think Raikou's a great addition to your team, and being able to use that as a defensive and offensive pivot for your team and be able to resist electric attacks is so big. I mean that could be make or break for your team right there. So just something to think about in the future.
All right, moving right along, we have Will's team, LFS. I was gonna say the full thing, but you know, maybe I'll
No,
say
go right ahead.
No, Brady, I'm so anxious to hear yours.
So here's the thing, Will. I love your team. Actually, I like if I got randomly assigned your team in a league, I would be perfectly happy with it because your team is so dangerous. It's so annoyingly dangerous. I can't even tell you. Like Skeledirge plus Blissey. I mean that is just the grossest and then also sorry, Slowbro in there as well. That is the dangerous combination of a trio of just tanky ass mons that just will never die. So it's just as a player fighting against that, it almost is like infuriating how good it is just in that regard alone. So like, I mean, give yourself a pat on the back for how you put it all together. And I also think that you have, I mean, to what Cam was just saying in terms of damage, you have a lot of raw damage output on your team that, I mean, even your tanks are providing, but also like Iron Valiant. Oh my gosh, that thing. I mean, Tony can attest in his game versus you. I mean, that thing is insanely good at dealing just a crap load of damage. One thing that I would love to see from your team, I would love to see some more terrain hazards from your team. A lot of your mons can set them up, and setting them up against opposing teams is really, really, really strong. I mean, take Nidoqueen for an example. I mean, that is a mon that can set up 3 different types of terrain hazard. And I mean, they can be potentially game changing if they come in and they're poisoning Mons or they're dealing static damage to Mons. I mean, that Valiant loves having terrain hazards up, where it can come in and it can just start dealing so much damage that people can't deal anything with. They can't put a focus sash on a Mon because terrain hazards are up. I mean, like, if you do something like that with your tanks, pivot through your tanks, make it so that somebody can't like set up on you, get some terrain hazards down, and then come in with one of your sweepers, that's going to be very, very dangerous for your team. So I actually rated your team pretty high. I will say a little bit more prep on your side might be good, but I have seen a dramatic improvement from last season to this season in terms of your gameplay. And I think just for that alone, I mean, again, give yourself a pat on the back in that regard, because you are doing a lot better, and I've noticed it in your gameplay. So keep it up, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Like coming out the gate, even the first few games, it was like, whoa. And the more you play, the more comfortable you'll get with your team. More prep time is always good. And I think you have a lot of creative options that are really cool to see. Because I think, sometimes people get so entrenched in the meta and then it's like you don't really surprise people. That element of surprise is kind of a weapon, right? Agree with Brady entirely. Like when I was looking at your team to set up your team for our game, you have just like great mons that like all kind of fit into a role, right? There's nothing that's like kind of like, oh, you could use this as this. They all kind of like fit, and when you pair them together with each other, they really can do a lot. That being said, if you pair them together and you don't like switch smoothly between them, that becomes an issue. Like in our game, there were several, and we talked about it. There were several instances where you could have made some switches that would really have benefited you. So, and again, I think this is a common problem through the league, and I think it's something that everybody can work on, except for me, who switches too much. Switches when he really doesn't need it. But don't be afraid to switch out. You'll be surprised at how tanky some of these mons are. Like if you spec them like all the way into defense, like Slowbro, and then you move into an attacking move, that thing's gonna take no damage. Or if you spec, Pharaoh Seed all the way into defense, or like Kragan all the way into special, or really Blissey all the way into special defense, right? You're taking no damage whatsoever. So like moving around that, also using hazards, absolutely. Wish passing would be awesome to see. I think there's a couple things there that you could use to really up your game. And then like you've run Iron Valley in a couple ways. I would love to see like a just standard buffing set come out, because I think you'll be surprised at how good it is. Not every week, but just some weeks. So that is all I have to say about your team.
So first things I want to say is that my ranking here, I put you 9th, and I don't know if that's quite fair. I just maybe don't quite see the dream as much as everyone else, and I think that's largely because I haven't had to prep against you and kind of see exactly what's going on. But first things first, I'm so jealous of that Valiant. Like I'm like Thanos with the Infinity Stones, but it's Iron Mons at this point, and I see that thing and I'm like, I want that so bad. Like, so yeah, I mean, they're like, Brady was right when you say like you have a lot of very good raw damage here. Like I see a lot of Mons that can come in and basically revenge kill anything they want to, right? And again, sorry, Brady, I don't have a lot to add on this one, but again, that defensive core, Skeleturge, Slowbro, Blissey, I mean, they are going to be very hard to break. Now, I guess the distinction there is like, again, Slowbro and Blissey really aren't outputting that much considered, but Skeleturge can. So I
might fight a little bit against that. Slowbro's base special attack is 90, so it can do damage and it can Scald Burn. So
yeah, I mean that's more the product of the burn, though. You're usually not afraid unless it's a super effective attack to take something from Slowbro, but I mean the semantics at that point. We can anyway, yeah. So I'm excited to actually fight against you because I kind of want to see what this team has to offer. And yeah, no, I think you've always kind of had the strangest strats, and I've really appreciated that about you. Like I remember, I can't remember exactly what happened in our fight last year, but you had you were doing those weird ass metronome strats, and I thought that was hilarious. Like, and then you started this year with like assault vest, some crazy thing on your Iron Valiant. Like,
yeah.
I love to see it. You're honestly one of the most creative preppers that there are. You know, it might not always go your way, but it's in the very least I appreciate it because it's like you never know what might stick, you know? So I think the courage to try there is pretty cool. And that is the end of my turn.
Yeah, and the courage to try, and once you find something that's good, then, keep using it. Okay. Tyler is next with TLL, the good old Laramies. So, Brady, what do you think? What do you think about Laramie?
Hold on, I'm pulling up. Sorry, guys.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. We're just live on air.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Okay, I'll reiterate one thing. Chien Pao, Zapdos, Hisuian Typhlosion, that core right there, such a terrifying offensive core. I mean, like, that core is so good at just, like, obliterating basically whatever it wants, right? So it's like that, in a nutshell, is an amazing strategy just in of itself. And you've got the tanky Mons, like Garganacl, who can pivot around that to make those three kind of do what you need them to do. Like Garganacl, Latios together, very tanky core that you can kind of pivot between those three Mons and make that happen. I haven't seen you do that too much this season. Between that kind of setup on that, which is fine, because, I mean, you do have other Mons you can play around with, and you do have other sets that you can play around with, but just... I mean, like, you built a strong team, actually. Like, play to your strengths, and I feel like you're going to be doing a lot better in this season than you have thus far. Like, I'm prepping for your team right now, and I'm having a good time prepping for it, and I've got some plans. But, like, that being said, like, that's... that's...
How ominous is that?
Yeah, I know. I'd be shaking right now.
All I'm saying is don't come to school tomorrow, Tyler.
Hey, yo!
But anyways, like, legitimately, I love this team. I love your offensive coverage here, and I'm excited to see how you can take it from here. Like I said, though, my biggest recommendation for you is, like, use those strengths that you have on your team to be able to come in with your Mons and do some serious damage to people. So, that's it, man. Great job so far.
Yeah, same with Brady. Excellent team. However, I kind of had the opposite opinion. Like, yeah, he's absolutely got some really strong, attackers, but he's got a lot of, like, Garganacl and Regice is a surprisingly good combination, right? Because they both kind of cover each other's weaknesses. One's, physical defensive, one's special. Seismitoad is a really excellent mon considering some of the weather teams we have here. And so I think if you can move it again, it's about finding that flow and knowing when to switch out. You're not I don't think you're as afraid to switch out, but like knowing when to switch out and to what, cuz you do hesitate sometimes, I think. But yeah, super scary team, a lot of good synergy here. I I would love to see a little changes in the gameplay and a little less predictability. And I think after the Garganacl game, you've stopped being as predictable. But for you, it's kind of either like you're like you do the same thing or you do something like really wacky and zany. And I think there's a little balance there, like between Trick Room and Garganacl lead, right? So I think if you find that, and I think you have been getting more and more comfortable in your team. So I think when you find that your niche, you're gonna be just deadly, dude. Like these mons are like scary, man. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, they kind of hit it on the head, but I want to add, I love the setup of this team, like the combo of Chien-Pao, Latios, and Zapdos Galar, and then with support from both Garganacl and Hisuian Typhlosion. I think that is terrifying to go up against. I remember going up against your Garganacl in week 1, and I really did not have a good counter to it. So I think that just with Garganacl and Regice alone, you basically have your defensive core, and then everything else can kind of just be like, all right, how do we put these Pokemon into position to where they can basically one-shot everything? Because I think with Rock support or Spike support or something like that, a lot of these Mons can just straight up take kills. Like Chen Pao basically just takes a kill. Latios can easily take a kill. Hisuian Typhlosion with Choice Scarf Eruption. I mean, like that. A lot of these Mons can basically, or Zapdos Galar with Choice Scarf or even Banned. I mean, they can just come in and take kills. So I think a little bit of rock support is what I'd say. But other than that, I really, really do like this team. I think it's really, really cool. I want to see a Cloyster Shell Smash game. I don't know if we quite got that yet, but in due time.
Yeah. One final note. Don't be afraid to choice Scarf. I know it sucks. I was your same opinion, but Scarf and Band on your team are just scary good, man. Like scary good. So don't be afraid, because then all you have to do is switch to one of your amazing tanks and you're fine.
Yeah, no, that's true.
All right. Now we have this weird dude, the Greek gamer with the whooshy finger hold, I think.
I have to say, I love how we all voted this one 5. I just want to put that out there first and foremost. I think that's really funny.
Yeah, we definitely all voted at 5. Ha,
Yeah, no, it was definitely 5. Unanimous.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Hey,
Opium.
so Tony, I like your team. I do. I think
You
that
do?
yeah, genuinely, I actually do.
Okay.
I think that the concept of being able to run 2 weathers is a unique one that not many people think about. And although it's challenging, I think you've brought it to a lot of success so far. So my thoughts about this are prepping. I like, how to put this. I know what you're going to prep because you're going to bring the stronger weather into my team, which makes me then prep against that weather, right? So like I'm able to predict that. I was able to predict that in our game, which gave me a bit of a leg up. But like, let's say that we run that back and you had prepped a different team into my team. I think I would have had a really, really tough time countering it then. Because then if I would have prepped for the wrong weather, I would have been in a lot more trouble. So like, I think you have done actually a great job of making it so that your team is balanced in both rain and sun. I think obviously sun is stronger, but not by in any amazing degree. You've brought a lot of success with your rain team as well this season. So I know that you've given yourself a lot of crap throughout the season, being like, oh, I've got a full sun team and half a rain team, but like genuinely both of your teams are very, very strong. So I want you to be like congratulated on that regard. I think your play has been solid. I think besides crush it, not using Don Bozo as well as you probably could have. Overall, I think your play has been incredibly solid. I've loved to see what you've been doing with Walking Wake. That Mon is an amazing Mon, and you've been actively thinking about every single game. How can you bring that Mon to its full potential there? Zapdos, besides putting Assault Vest and then 3 status moves on it, is really, really cool. I think that you've had a good time with that. And yeah, I like this team. I'm interested to see how your trades pan out. Silgu Hisui is interesting and funny to me a little bit because it doesn't really. I'm interested to see what you do with it. I'll put it that way. Because when it comes onto the field, in my opinion, it doesn't offer much, which is my biggest concern with that Mon. It's super tanky, obviously, with Eviolite, but like, I'm interested to see how you actually use it because you actually were using Torkoal really, really well. Not Torkoal, but Colossal really, really well. So, anyways, I think that the Volcanion trade though is an excellent trade. I really like that one for your team. It works really, really well in both Rain and Sun, being a water absorb Mon. Clodsire is a great Mon. I think you've really, really used that one well. I mean, even in your game against Camden, your biggest threat was Iron Bundle, and you spec Clodsire exactly to the point where it could be the perfect pivot for you in that regard. So, anyways, I'm impressed with your team. I think that it's working out really, really well for you. I do think there's areas that you can improve on. But overall, I like what you've been doing. So.
Yeah, my team, I like it. It's funny. Um, I think it's not. It doesn't really play to the best of my abilities, I guess. Um, because I think I'm more of like a core pivoter, and so that's been really hard for me having like mons that like you don't have every core on your team to kind of like have something to switch in to. It's definitely true about the whole rain versus sun thing. I'm pretty predictable there. Um, the Sliggoo was kind of like a I needed like a steel mon that I could switch in, which sucked to get rid of the colossal. But um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that was the best, but I do think the Volcanion really helped my team a lot. Um, it's just the problem with this team is it's got like some things that it can do really well, but it just doesn't have that many tools in its belt. Um, which you can still definitely work around. The tools that it does have are really strong, but it doesn't have as many as it really needs to. Uh, Also, I've kind of gotten lucky in some of my games. Um, I think my play hasn't been perfect either. I've made some, pretty big mistakes in some games. But, under pressure, it's really easy to do that. And I think a lot of people have ended up doing that. So, I think it's a good team. I think I play well. But I don't think it's the best. So, I think where it's at is just about perfect.
I need to stop going third because everything that
Ah.
I really have keeps getting brought up. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the idea of the two weathers is cool, but I think a lot of the times it might be a little bit spread thin. Because before Brady actually said it, I had the exact same thought. Where like I could tell based on my team which weather you were going to bring, and I kind of prep against that. Like you had told me like yesterday, you were like, "Oh, why didn't Tangrowth come?" And it's like, well, because I knew sun was going up, you know. So like it it makes it so that you have a weather team, but it's almost like you only have half the mons to do it with. Because if you can kind of predict that weather, then you don't have a full 11 roster spot to actually use that weather. So I think that's kind of the only awkward thing about using two different weathers. That being said, I think by and large your play is kind of made up for it. I think that this team is worse than you are performing. So that's a pretty good compliment there. And Walking Wake, I got to see firsthand yesterday how much of an absolute monster that thing is. When you get it in sun, I mean, that thing is crazy strong. So, I mean, that's a pretty god tier mon. So, with Torkoal, I love that. But, yeah, I also wrote down that Volcanion, I think, was an amazing pickup. I was with Brady. Is Sliggoo still your Terra captain too, or is that just because it's red fonted?
Yeah, I just decided. I'll tell y'all. I was gonna say, you can trade out your Terra captain for one of your trades, but nobody's actually done that. So I feel like to do that at the very end of trading would be a little underhanded. So we're just gonna keep it as is. But that way, I can make it part of my team. I can make it water or fire. Easy.
But yeah, I mean, in short, cool idea for a team. Maybe sometimes in practice it might not go quite as far as you want it to, just because again, I feel like if it were like you were climbing the ladder or something like that, and someone just randomly popped up on your team and they see, you can kind of do in a draft league when you can kind of see like, all right, which one is better into my team? That's the one I'm going to prep against. A lot of times you're almost prepping against half a team there with a lot of mons that maybe aren't quite up to par.
Yeah.
Like people love this thing, and I tried it last year, but the Heliolisk, did you trade that? I don't see it right now.
No.
You saw it, yeah.
Still got it.
I hated Heliolisk.
Really?
Wow. I hated that because it's so frail, and I always felt like it was never doing enough damage. I know it's like kind of one of the more trademark weather Pokemon, but on my Sun team last year, I was like, I just don't like this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's more of a me thing. So, but yeah, like I said, cool team in concept. I think your play has really kind of bolstered it and kind of made it look a little sexy at times when maybe it has some weaknesses. But yeah, no, it's immune to hydro pumps too, which is always kind of cool.
That's so cool. That's probably the best part about your team, actually.
It is very cool.
I actually paid the agency to, fiddle with the RNG a little bit.
I had to throw that comment in there, but that being said, you have to be aware. This is just a little note for anyone that when you're using low accuracy moves, it's Pokemon, and when it's not 100% accurate, it's 50% accurate. So
yep,
you're kind of doing. You're doing yourself in when you get mad at an 80% loss. It's like, well, it's bound to happen 50% of the time, So,
Mm-hmm.
All right, that is where I end.
All right, Konner with Ice. What do we all think about Ice?
Wow, I just realized. Never mind. I'll let Tony explain why he ranked at 7. So here's the thing. Gen 9 Ice got a massive buff. I mean, that defense buff on Ice. That means, and I explained this with Sand with special defense, but since so many Mons are so strong in their attack stat, especially in Gen 9, Ice became so strong for that exact reason. And Aurora Veil, specifically with Baxcalibur, is a monster. And I knew this from the get-go, and we've seen it play out in Konner's team, and it's so good. I mean, that Mon can come in, and if you're not prepared for it, it's just going to walk through your entire team, and there's nothing that you can do about it, and it's really annoying. So I think Konner, you drafted an amazing team. The one caveat with the team is that because it's made to do that one thing very, very well, it's very predictable what you're going to be doing every single game as a result. It's like, I know you're bringing Alola Ninetales. I know you're bringing Baxcalibur. They pair too well together. They work well in every single game effectively. Heatran's probably coming too. And as a result, for my prep, I was able to really work around those things a lot better. I mean, you saw with Ninetales, I was able to work around that with Goldango, and I was able to work around your Baxcalibur with my, Encore. And there were things like that it's just like, it makes your life a lot harder if you're more predictable. That being said, like, you can work around that by playing around the prediction that people are making for your moves. And by that I mean, like, yes, the best set on Baxcalibur is always going to be that exact same set that I was just talking about. That being said, maybe instead of doing that, you instantly, instead of coming in with a Dragon Dance, you come in with a Scale Shot to predict somebody thinking that you're going for Dragon Dance or something along those lines, Get that automatic damage up, boost that speed, something along those lines where it's like it makes you harder to predict. Or like with Ninetales, instead of always setting up, you could pivot out of Ninetales immediately and not set up Aurora Veil and go to something else to make people think that you're staying in with Ninetales. I mean, like, little moves like that will improve your gameplay a lot and will make it so that people have a very tough time predicting what's going to come next with your team. Even if it's the same stuff every single time, switching up the moves is very, very important for your gameplay. So that's honestly the biggest recommendation that I have for you. But that being said, you have a great team, man. Like, genuinely, I mean, it is definitely a dangerous team, and it has to be respected. So congratulations in that regard.
Yeah, I really do think it is a well put together team, scary. The reason I ranked it 7 was because all of that pack I thought was really close. Like, I had 5, 6, 7, really kind of tight in my opinion. Um, I I think it's a really good team, and I guess I probably would have rated it higher had I thought about the potential that it has in the next few weeks. Because I think, yeah, if eh, there are some clear strats on your team, and I think this is. I got to correct something you said earlier, Brady. Mundie wasn't the only person who's never played Draft League. Konner has never played Draft League, to my knowledge. Um, so I think what comes with Draft League is like experience about, okay, you know, I'm not just picking the most optimal thing. I'm kind of trying to get into my opponent's head and not only pick mons that are, good against what my opponent's thinking about, but uh, pick moves that are good into what my opponent's thinking about. Like I remember I was just watching something where you switched in, like I think it was you and Brady. I think you switched in Ninetales into his Goldango, and like yeah, you get the Aurora Veil off. It's nice, whatever. But like I I I forget who you had. You had another switch that was like perfect to go into um, against the Goldango. So sometimes like it's worth it to not try to get like that perfect strategy to get more chip damage in or a nice switch or get momentum. So I think this team has a lot of potential, and I think Konner, you've been vastly improving, but I think it's just going to take a little more experience and practice.
So ever since this team was drafted, I've been kind of afraid of it. I rank this one pretty high. I love the Alola Ninetales Baxcalibur. I mean, everything they just said. I mean, it really is a match made in heaven. And as Brady was saying, Snow got a giant buff here in Gen 9. So I'm a big fan. You're kind of almost what I wanted Tony to do, where it's like you are like I am a Snow team. It's like which could be good or bad, kind of depending on how you look at it. Because I'm very similar with my Electric Train team, but yeah, no, I mean I love Baxcalibur. I think that's an incredible mon. I mean, it's ranked high for a reason. One thing I don't love, and maybe other people disagree with me this year, but the tier 0 of Enamorus Incarnate, I've never been in love with that mon. I think that when you look across the tier 0 board, you see a pretty consistent pattern of these are hard-hitting, fast mons, and I feel like Enamorus Incarnate just isn't quite that as much because it doesn't quite do it for me. And having it be the Terra Captain, I haven't really seen it on your team be used to much success. And I know the first couple games it was more because it never got out. It's like we didn't get to see what it could do. But I've never been super, super in love with that thing. I personally, I would have loved to see a Terra Captain on Heatran because I think that Heatran has never been better, and I think he works so well for your team. I love Heatran for your team. I think that Flash Fire ability on that is so damn good. And if it just had like a Grass Terra or something like that, I mean, trying to switch in between that and Alola Ninetales and Earthworm, I mean, like that and Slowking Galar, I mean, that is such a nightmare of a combo because you always have to keep them guessing, and it's going to be really, really hard to just throw out super effective moves because you almost always have a counter for it. So my one thing I've never liked about this team is the tier 0, just because I'm not really in love with that mon. But other than that, like I said, I've been afraid of this team ever since it was drafted. I rated it very, very high because I fear it. I think that Baxcalibur, when it gets boosted up, I mean, it is absolutely terrifying. So
it is so good. And yeah, I had the exact same thought about Enamorus too, Camden. I thought Heatran is such a good mon, especially in Gen 9. Being able to Terra that thing is so I mean, like, Flash Fire, Heatran, Terra Grass is so ungodly difficult to deal with, especially since one of the only ways at that point to deal with it is ice moves, and you have so many ice switch-ins. So, anyways.
exactly my thought. Yep.
All right, now we are at Camden's team, the STDs. Let's go, STDs.
Yes, sir.
Win every time.
Coming near you.
One thing that I noted about this team is that it's lacking its ability to hit Hydro Pumps. Yeah, I'm sorry. All right. So Camden, I mean, I rated your team a lot higher than you rated your team. I'm interested to see your notes on your own team. But that being said, the biggest thing that I have to state is I was wrong about Iron Thorns, Camden. I think Iron Thorns has proven to be such a good Mon, and that's mainly because of Terra, but it also works really, really, really well as a Terra Mon. And so like I can't knock the fact that it's been so good for your team. I mean, you bring it to every single game and it hasn't let you down basically since it started. You know what I mean? So like in terms of the Mons that you've brought, I mean like you have some amazing pivots in here, and now with the addition of Hydreigon, I mean, you have such a strong core of Mons that you're going to be pivoting between. I mean, Hydreigon, Klefki, Gastrodon, Iron Moth, Iron Thorns, and Bronzong all can tank a lot of different moves, and especially that I know we talked about this, but like Bronzong and Hydreigon, so good together. They work way too well together. So like I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do in the future with the Mons that you drafted, like Klefki. I had a fun time with that last season. Honestly, like your team, it has so much hitting power, and it has setup Mons, and it kind of has everything that you want it to have. You know what I mean? So like in terms of your team, I think that you are going to be doing incredibly well inside of the season, especially going forward. Obviously, your last 2 games haven't been an indication of that, but that's mainly because of RNG in your last 2 games. So like you were undefeated up until then. I think that you're going to prove to be very hard to beat going forward from here, especially with the addition of the Mons that you just drafted. So I love your team, man. I'm interested to see why you ranked it so low, though.
Well, I almost feel like I'm intruding now, because now I want to know. But yeah, I really like your team. I feel like both of you guys. I don't know why. I judge teams a lot by vibes, and like both of you guys have like a skeleton of a team where it's like not a skeleton in a bad way, but it's like a skeleton where it's really, really aggressive and good at each mon is kind of like really extremely good at what it does, and then there's not a lot of meat on the bones, which I think is good. And I think obviously, in both seasons, you guys have used it to great strengths. I did have a note about this that I like more bruisery type mons. And obviously you have some bruisery type, but there's just something about the team that just speaks like that to me. But and yeah, this has been a terrifying team. It was absolutely terrifying to prep against Iron Bundle, especially. But your electric terrain with Iron Bundle is just surprisingly good. The Entei pickup, I think, was really, really smart. I think that really rounds out your team a lot. The only thing I'd say is I'm a little sad that it kind of feels like the T5s are like just T5 picks. Like it feels like there's not really a niche case where you use them, and maybe there will be, but I just haven't seen either of them come out at all. Especially since Wishcash is like very similar to Gastrodon. I know they do different things, but it's like the exact same typing, So that's the only. I had to be really nitpicky because there's not a lot bad to say about this team. Like it's just freaking strong. It's very scary, and if you do something wrong, you could end up with your whole team wipe. Especially the Gastrodon, which I really didn't think would be that scary, but I should have. But yep, those are my thoughts.
It's funny, just a real quick side note about like the Wizcash. The only reason I drafted that was because it swept Brady the night before draft league, or our draft. We played we were just playing like random showdown games just for fun, and I got a Wizcash, and it was like Steel Terra Dragon Dance, and it just swept his whole team.
God, it was.
And so I was like,
it was so hard to watch.
I was like, I gotta get it now. But so first note is that I went back and forth between me and Konner's team for like 10 minutes because I had no idea which one I liked better. Ultimately, I went him over me, but I think basically they're interchangeable in my mind in terms of my ranking. So why I rank myself a little bit lower is it's clearly hyper offense. Like that I've noticed in a lot of my games, like there are so many times when I just have to say, all right, what mon do I want to sack? It's like full health mon. Like yesterday, I was kicking myself so hard because I sent out Coco which just invited the Clodsire to come back in and take them on. It's like, well, I'm 4 ground weaknesses, so then it just dies. Something's got to die. So like, it's very, very predicated on I'm just going to overwhelm you with offense and hope that you can't outlast that. Another big weakness, especially that popped up after I dropped my Sneasler here, is I am very, very reliant on special attackers. If you look at this, I mean, really the only major threat of a physical attacker at this point is Iron Thorns.
And but yeah.
An Entei, I mean, yeah. But Brady can attest, I have some thoughts to kind of get around that a little bit that I've kind of brought up, but I am very reliant on special attackers for the most mons that are kind of doing a lot of my damage. But that being said, I think it's a cool team. I've always really, really enjoyed it. It allows for a lot of flexibility because I've really enjoyed the idea of like, you get Coco in there, and then you have 3 different mons based on what your opponent has that can come in at any point and get a boost from the electric train, and they can, do their own thing. So I think it's very versatile in that way that it can kind of, each mon plays its role pretty well in my team because, coincidentally, they're all Iron Mons, go figure. So they all kind of do their own thing a little bit. But yeah, so I think I'm a little light on defense and I'm a little heavy on special attacking, which is kind of why I've ranked it. And I also don't think my play has brought out the fullest potential to this team. I definitely think there's a lot of areas where I could have played a lot better throughout the season. So a lot of that's me and not the team, but it had to reflect in my score a little bit.
I think that with your new mons that you just drafted, though, especially like Klefki and Hydra, like really Klefki and Hydreigon, when I say that, like you're going to have more defensive coverage. So I really do think that now you've got your good offense and you've got your good defense. So I think that your team is going to be a lot more what you're looking for now, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So.
I certainly hope so. We'll see. I was telling Brady, I had a vision on the plane ride over back from Hawaii. I had a spirit vision of Hydreigon, Iron Moth, and Bronzong. Because it's like if anyone has the Pokemon type calculator, go put in those 3 mons with their abilities. And the defensive coverage there is absolutely terrifying, like totally astounding. So,
yeah. That's funny. All right. Brady with the BGG, who didn't change his mons, I'm just noticing.
Oh, lol. Yeah, sorry. That one.
I'll do it in the actual draft sheet. But so Ursaluna has changed to Annihilate, and Quaquaval has changed to what again?
Quaquaval has changed to Rotom Wash.
Rotom
Wash. Too many Rotoms, dude.
Dude, I want all the appliances. Give them to me right now. Gosh, what can I say about my team? I love my team. I've had a really, really fun time playing around with my team this season. I think a lot of my mons are fun and they're also like good, so I enjoy that. Wow, that is no. Anyways, I think that still is wrong, but it's closer. Anyways, I have really, really loved playing around with this team. That being said, I mean, it clearly has weaknesses. I think my team, even with Sticky Web, is incredibly slow. So, like, I have pretty much entirely relied on, like, Sticky Web, and then being able to set up with Dragonite, like, or Virizion, or something along those lines where it's like, I mean, you kind of know what I'm going to be doing every single game, but you don't know when I'm going to do it. And so as a result, I've gotten used to being able to play around my speed and being able to use mons kind of defensively. And I think in my games, and this is something that Tony brought up, mons that have like decent defenses, especially in Gen 9 where not every single mon is so frickin' strong and legendary. Mons with like base 80 defenses are a lot more tanky than they come off immediately. So like something like Spidops, it doesn't have amazing defenses, but it has enough defense to the point where it's able to take some hits, right? So like I've been able to use that to my advantage in my games to be able to pivot around mons and to be able to pivot around people. So like for the most part, I think I've had a good time just doing that and learning how to play differently than I normally like to play. But that being said, because I've had to learn that, it hasn't been so natural for me. So there's a lot of times where I don't make the quote unquote correct play in a situation, and I make mistakes. So because of that, I made these switches that I just made to not only give myself some greater advantages in the future, but also to raise the overall speed stat of my mons, right? To give myself a little bit of a more fighting edge. So I think that this should be a huge improvement for me. I am gonna miss Ursaluna. I am gonna miss Quaquaval. Both of those mons were very, very good. But that being said, Ursaluna crawled so that the ape could walk. So it's time for the ape to escape, baby.
Well, all I have to say is the ape is not escaping. No, I I think that for notes I'm like I don't know what to write about this team because it feels like an entirely different team just with those two trades. Um, I will say the slow thing is definitely a thing, which kind of forces you to either bring Giraffe Eye or Spite Ops. Um, but I mean, just with like your Dragonite alone, you've really like crushed through some teams. Maybe I just still have PTSD, but you've used the Goldango really well as well, and I think the Hisuian Gudra has kind of surprised you.
So good.
I think there's a lot of really solid mons and obviously solid play on this team. Um, you've kind of played around opponents with the prankster. You've kind of set up really nicely. Um, I'm very curious to see what's going to happen. I really would like to see the Verizian and Wug Trio come out. I think especially with what you mentioned about Gen 9, I think Verizian's a lot better than it used to be. And I think Wug Trio definitely can be a solution for your speed tiering option, um, or negative, but it is kind of hard to apply those in your games. So we'll just kind of have to see. But yeah, I think it's a well put together team, and I think the play style is very scary. So.
I want to start by saying that this is the mosquito. If there was like an animal equivalent of a team, this is the mosquito. Like this team is so utterly annoying. Like watching Brady's games. I mean, especially like his game against Noah. I mean, you watch games like that and like where he's just able to infinitely pivot around you and just slowly chip down your team. Like that is definitely what you do best. Because I won't lie, I've never really seen the dream with this team that much. Brady can attest. I've been a Ursaluna Blood Moon hater since he drafted it.
Oh god.
I'm really really happy with the Annihilate switch because I just did not like the Blood Moon as a good tier 0 pick. Yeah, I hate to beat dead this point, but I mean speed is obviously your Achilles heel, and we've talked about this in length, so I don't want to bring it up too much more. But I mean clearly that is like I don't know if do you have a mon that's above base 105 speed?
No.
Yeah, so it's like
Wug Trio's in base 90 speed.
No, it's not. No. Anyways,
maybe it's faster and it's actually hold on. Yeah, I do actually prefer base 110.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, true. But yeah, I think that this team forces you to be very calculated in how you make your moves. And I think if I was purely basing my rank on like team comp, I might not rank this team as high, but I think that like you have done an incredible job at piloting it. And you're the only undefeated person left in the league, so it goes to show that you've done a very good job with it. I think that the new additions you had are really, really good. I think Quaquaval it's cool, but it always kind of felt like it was lacking a little bit. I think Rotom gives you a lot more what you want. I think it's a really good water switch in like you didn't really have before. Yeah, like what Tony said, a lot of the times, again, because of that speed, you're forced into bringing Spite Ops, which can be a little bit predictable because it's awkward because if you start a game predicting a Spite Ops start, and you bring spot ups and it doesn't start, it's kind of awkward to get it in the middle of the game because then maybe you might not get quite as much utilization out of it as you want to.
Yep, that's
So
very true.
I think the last couple games you really thrive with bringing Monkey because I feel like Monkey is just a better supporting mon than Spot Ops because once Spot Ops gets up webs, I mean, it really it kind of just falls on its face from there.
Yeah, it's done what it
So-
needed to do.
Right, yeah, I mean, that's the one thing. So it's like if you have a mon that has rapid spin, and I know that's kind of the whole reason behind Goldango and everything, but if you can pivot around the Spot Ops and then your team's sitting there at base 80 speed pretty much around the clock, it's like there's a lot of teams that I feel like are going to be able to overwhelm that with just pure offense. But up to this point, hasn't happened because you have done an incredible job at piloting around that. So congrats there. But yeah, I mean, the absolute, like I said, the mosquito of the league is this thing is so annoying. Like I've watched all your games and it's just like watching your opponents try and deal with all the trillion switches and all. I mean, it's just infuriating.
I'm glad that you've enjoyed it so far.
All right. With that, and we leave the Ghost Week team. Get wrecked. I
wasn't gonna say
it. To go to, I just noticed it. To go to the top, JayJay Van Bebe, TEB. What are our thoughts on this final team? The top of the top.
So here's the thing about Jalen's team, right? Jalen's team has I when helping Jalen prep and design this team, I specifically thought of Jalen as a player when I thought of the mons that we were picking for his team. Like Miltank, we had talked about in a pretty good amount of detail. We had talked about Regieleki, and then we had also talked about Meowscarada. And the reason why I recommended those mons for him is because they're incredible. I said this in the last video too. They're so versatile. They're going to play into Jalen's strengths, which is the fact that he is an amazing prepper at games. You see this in every single game that Jalen plays. He has an answer to the most common things that you're going to be bringing to a team, bar none. He always brings mons that have a specific usage and for a specific reason. So giving him those tools, which have so many options of what they want to do, have allowed him to really kind of express himself as a draft player. And it's honestly it's like art. It's like watching somebody make art in Pokemon. Like Miltank has been used so often because its move pool is so wide and it's so tanky in of itself, right? So you saw in Camden's game, that thing used Steel Roller specifically because Steel Roller takes away the terrain, which is Camden's biggest strength. His mons need that terrain to be up. So it's so impressive to watch Jalen every single game think around different strategies and kind of make these plays. Jalen, there's one note, and we're all gonna make it. And sorry guys, I'm the first person that's gonna be doing it, so haha, nana boo boo. But Jalen, the thing about you as a player, your strength is that you're able to plan incredibly well. The weakness that comes with that strength is if something doesn't go to your plan, you begin to panic, and it shows in your gameplay. Like it showed with Camden, where you started to panic and you started to flail around and throw out mons rather than thinking about individual moves that you could be making. You know, even if RNG was the reason why that happened in the first place, that still doesn't. That still means that you need to be calculated in your moves going forward. It's like, okay, my original plan didn't work. What's the next best plan that then I can effectuate? And that, as a player, that's here's the thing. That's a personality thing. That's not even like a Pokemon thing. Like that's something that you as a person are gonna probably have to overcome more than just a player. But that being said, like remember, we don't have a timer in Pokemon, right? You can take as much time as you need with your turns, much to Camden's dismay. So just take some breaths, take some time, think about the moves that you're going to be making going forward, and don't panic. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to immediately start clicking buttons at all. You don't have to feel like you need to do that. Just come up with a plan B, and if you're able to work on that improvisation, you will be so incredibly difficult to beat as a player. So honestly, hats off to you, man. It's been really fun to watch you play, and I'm excited. I'm really excited to play against you. Not obviously like this next game that I'm playing, but sometime this week because you're also the next opponent that I'm facing. So, looking forward to that, man.
By the way, Tony, I don't mean to cut you off real quick, but I feel like I'm one of the players that takes longer on the timer, and I think yesterday my message got misunderstood because like me and Tony at the very end of the game, I mean, we were both running through 1,000 different situations in our head, you know.
Yeah.
So I was taking forever, and I just like couldn't click a move because I was like, I don't know what the best option is here. So I put in the chat, I was like, sorry, taking forever, and I think that was understood as me saying, Tony, you're taking forever, because then when I finally did put in my move, I saw Tony
is that
hadn't.
why people thought? Yeah, I was still like taking my time. I think I'd clicked to move, and then I was like, wait.
Yeah, no, because I was like, oh my god, I'm taking so long in this turn, and then finally I put in a move, and then I was like, oh, Tony hasn't even gone yet. So
No,
I was like,
I totally understood that. Plus, I took like literally forever on my very first move. So I was like, I put out Colossal, and then I was like, well, what do I do now? So, no, don't even worry about it, dude. No worries. But speaking of Jalen's team, yeah, totally agree with Brady. It was a very deep psychological analysis, but like, yeah, on a more surface level, when something goes bad, have a plan B kind of thing. Instead of, it's like the chess analogy I used. You're thinking 8 moves ahead, and 8 moves ahead is great, but if something goes wrong, you got to have something to fall back on. And that's why it's nice to have it's nice to like think in your head, okay, well, this didn't go well. He's got a physical attacker. Okay, I should switch into Stunfisk, or like I should switch into Miltank. Having something there that's just kind of like a safety pick is always nice. But yeah, really great prep. Excellent play. I mean, I've been quite impressed. Especially, we talked about this last season, but you've had limited experience or exposure to Pokemon, and you're already like on number 1 in our mid-season power ranking. So hats off to you. You've done an awesome job, and I am super excited to see the rest of the games.
Yeah, not a ton to say here. I'm not going to give you some psychological analysis and some. I'm no psychiatrist like Brady, but I think really cool team. Reggie Alecki, I was planning on drafting him as my tier 0 before you picked him up, so it hurts me to see him used so effectively with someone else. I didn't even know Steel Roller was a move, and it's kind of embarrassing to say because my team is based around terrain, so you'd hope that I'd kind of know the weaknesses. But I mean, it just goes to show that you are very, very particular in your planning, which is, I mean, great to see. I mean, 95% of the time it works out for you, and it's scary to watch. I mean, I remember feeling powerless in my game against it. So really, really cool team. Reggie Alecki's awesome. I know we had talked a little bit about Celesteela. Did a trade ever go through? Am I leaking information here?
No, it did. No, I mean trades
are
technically over too.
Well, we'll see. All
right, so never mind that. I really love Celesteela. I think it's a really cool mon. It again in my game, I made the wrong assumption on what Celesteela was, and it almost cost me dearly. I mean, it did cost me, but it almost cost me the game. So I think mons like that are super, super cool. Pairs really well together. I know you had some bad luck early on in the season, but it kind of seems like things are evening out now. I'm excited to see. Hearing Tony say, oh, you could pivot into Stunfisk might have been the first time I've ever heard that, so I'm excited to see what you do with that thing. Yeah. I think you've got a really cool team where you have a lot of defense and a lot of switch-ins, but at the same time, Lecky, Meowscarada, Haxorus can all 3 come in and do just scary amounts of damage to anything it comes across. So, cool team. Reason it's number 1. Keep it up, champ.
Yeah, true.
Mm-hmm.
Not champ yet, though. And I'm not going to let it happen if I can stop it.
Ooh, them's fighting words.
Not if Spite Ops has anything to say about it.
That's true, dude. Everyone's gangster until they come in on Spite Ups. What are you gonna do then? Huh?
The Spite Ups. Well, with that, I think we are wrapped up. It was great going through this. Thank you to my co-casters. Man, everyone, it's been a really excellent season. Thank you guys again for playing. I mean, we couldn't do this without you. So really appreciate it, and it's just been a blast. It's been so fun to see so many cool games, and I'm so excited for it to continue. Any final thoughts, guys? Shout out to your Instagram pages where everyone can follow you.
Hey, besides my amazing Instagram page that totally exists, I actually do have one thing that I need to talk about. We will be releasing information regarding playoffs coming up here soon.
Yes.
We
yes.
just need to get that more organized before we send that over your guys' way. Sorry for the delay there, but we're going to make that happen here pretty quickly. So apologies, we'll get it out to you ASAP, but it's just taking a little bit more time than we'd wanted. So sorry.
I pray each and every one of you.
Planned it. We planned it to be released.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
I hope everyone has a fun rest of the season, and I pray you hit all your hydro pumps.
Just pay the agency, dude. Come on. Oh, man. All right. Well, with that, signing off from Bidoof's Champion Showdown Tournament, Season 2, Power Rankings number 2. We are your cast of Raiders signing off. Peace out.
Peace out, everybody.
Peace.